Hello, welcome everyone to today's podcast, The Engineer Whisperer. Super happy to have you here today because, well, I brought you another super awesome guest. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Andrea.
And today we're gonna sit down and chat about you, about your journey that involves being an engineer. But before we start, give us a brief intro about who you are. Who do you want us to meet today?
Sure. So I think the professional background is as a software engineer. I'm also a husband and a dog dad. And yeah, I think fun fact, I through college, I actually paid my way through college in an interesting way. I was a part-time magician, and I'd sort of go to cocktail parties and do card tricks and things of that nature. So very, very unusual, kind of different way of paying for college. But yeah, fun fact about me.
So you didn't just have fun by doing what you like, you also got paid for it.
Also got paid for it. Yeah, it was pretty good.
Oh, wow. We're gonna have to unfold that a little bit later.
Sure.
That's super cool. Well, let's then jump right in. I get this question all the time. People are curious when I meet an engineer. So tell me, Andrea, did your guests always want to become an engineer? So same question for you. As a child, did you want to become an engineer? Was this even in your thoughts, or the opposite?
A little bit the opposite. Yeah, I was pretty sure I was going to be the next David Copperfield, a magician, up until I was about, I think, 15 or so, and then I started getting paid, to kind of go and do things. And certainly, you could make a good amount of money doing it, but I didn't know like the uncertainty of gigs and stuff like that. I wasn't sure you could really provide for a family, so I decided I was going to go to college. That was not a clear choice for me, and I went to college, and then I did about 3.5 years into a 4 year degree on physical therapy of all things. I really liked health and fitness, and I didn't really want to do personal training. I thought this was a little bit more like closer to being a doctor, but kind of less work. And I got to the actual point where I needed to start doing clinical hours and realized I did not like it. It was not enjoyable at all. So yeah, it took 3.5 years to realize it. But the fun fact is, right around that time, those Marvel movies that came out with Iron Man and Jarvis and all those things. So it was right around that time when those movies came out, and I saw it and I was hooked. I thought that was so cool, and I asked myself the question, why can't we talk to computers right now? It feels like you could build that sort of thing. I've seen crazy things that are already possible, so why don't we have real life artificial intelligence talking to us yet? And I'm like, that's kind of what I want to do. And I kind of went down full into that. I decided, okay, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it right. I want to work for a big tech company like Google. And then I kind of went full into it like that. So that's my my humble beginnings as an engineer. I didn't write my first line of code until I would think I was 24.
So tell me more. This is so interesting when you say I went full into it. Like, what did that mean for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I decided like if I was gonna, need to pivot, 3.5 years was already kind of wasted. So
Yeah.
two of those were undergrad, general credits and stuff like that. So it wasn't terrible, but a year and a half is what I lost. So I was like, well, I need to kind of go in, and this was sort of the first time I think I took school very seriously. And it's not that I was a bad student before, but it was, fairly easy to get good grades in, kind of throughout high school and even in college. It wasn't particularly hard because I had, a decent kind of background and stuff. But this was where I'm like, okay, I'm going to learn just because it's fun to learn. And so I'd start coding. I coded a bunch of stuff before I had any official kind of coding classes. I was like, this is great. I love this. This is awesome. And then I learned that I needed to know more math. And I honestly thought at the time I'd need to know a lot of math. So I kind of went down the deep rabbit hole of like, well, I've always told myself I was bad at math and I couldn't do math well, but like I've never really gotten bad grades in math. I just didn't like it. So let's kind of go down the rabbit hole and let's kind of explore this as much as possible. So I took a bunch of like calc classes and like I got A's through all of them, and even sort of the harder ones that a lot of people struggle with, I got A's through just because I'm like, well, this is what I need. I didn't know at the time that you actually don't need calculus. To do well as an engineer, but it was helpful because I'm like, this is what I need to know, so I'm gonna go full bore, so to speak.
So did you at that point? change your major, or this was still like, was it a conscious decision that you're already on the path towards an engineering degree, or?
Thankfully, there was overlap between kind of, again, the gen eds I needed to take, and then
Hmm.
to a certain extent for physical therapy, you needed to know statistics and things like that. So there was,
Okay.
some kind of overlap. So I was able to pivot a lot of my kind of curriculum stuff, and I'm like, well, I needed to take a stats class anyways, but now I'm going to actually care about it, and I changed majors, actually dropped out of the original sort of school I went to, which was Oakland University in Michigan. Shout out to the Oakland, and decided to go to U of M, and then kind of did University of Michigan because they have a good computer science program there.
I see. So you did transition into a different community, different school.
Yes,
And
yeah, no, it's funny because I was, I think, about five years older than everyone else that was kind of in the freshman sort of class of computer science curriculum
Mhm.
stuff. So it was nice. Like I was kind of like the old guy in the staff. And not that 24, 25 was old, but definitely it was like I felt the need to like because everyone else, like almost everyone in the entire kind of first class I had been coding since they were like 9 years old. So it definitely felt a little bit of imposter syndrome. So I was more motivated, I think, than the average person to do really well.
Well, what challenges did you run into? Maybe, not just that you are an older student, but that you pivoted majors. If
Yeah, I
any.
think there's this thing of imposter syndrome that kind of happens throughout different courses. I think most people experience it, but there's definitely was this feeling like, what have I done? This is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And I think there's a huge difference between let's say like going into medicine is very different than I think going into computer science. And the reason mostly I think came down to that medicine was an awful lot about memorizing body parts, anatomy, um, techniques, acronyms, and things like that. It was very heavy on memorization. That was something I was very good at.
I see.
And computer science was very heavy on sort of critical thinking, which is something I don't think I fully learned to do until I actually entered the program and kind of went through it because it's like, wait, you're telling me there's going to be answers on a test that are not things I can memorize ahead of time? I need to like think through this, kind of like a math problem, but not quite. It was fascinating and terrifying all at the same time.
It's so interesting that you mentioned the imposter syndrome because, based on what you said, you were on the path and you chose that path.
Yeah.
Like you wanted to be on that path. So was that because you were comparing yourself with the other students? But then didn't you find that those or some of them didn't have that same drive? So then it evened out?
I found the drive tended to help, and so I kind of had the mantra that I was just going to work harder than everybody else. I wasn't as smart as everyone, but I was going to work harder than
Okay.
everyone, and that was kind of the idea going into it. So it was funny the overlap of things that I would know and things that sort of students would know. So a vivid example of this was in my operating systems class where I talked about sort of like the security of why an operating system kind of needs to, like when there's an upgrade that happens, why you need to kind of give it root access to it. And like that was very clear to me why that happened. And it was because I would read the textbook. I was one of the very few people that actually read the textbook kind of cover to cover. And I really enjoyed it. And that was kind of how I grew up. I was homeschooled, so I read textbooks for fun is maybe a little bit of a stretch, but that was sort of how I consumed most of the
Yeah,
material.
you got used to it. That was part of your learning. Uh-huh.
Exactly. And so I think that kind of was interesting because I understood exactly why the operating system kind of worked the way it did, and then I explained it to somebody else, and they're like, "How on earth do you know this?" And it's like this, didn't you do the readings? And like, no, they didn't. It's just like they've kind of and a lot of their kind of stuff had always been about relying on just um, the take-home tests and sort of the study guide and stuff like that, and only kind of doing just literally what was in the material. And full
Mm.
disclosure, I think I overdid studying in the wrong way. It's like just because you don't read every line of the textbook doesn't mean like you're not learning as well. So I think there was some learning moments for me too there. But yeah, definitely a different way of learning that kind of came out.
What a humbling experience it
Yeah.
sounds like.
Yeah.
Actually, I also went back to school as an older student, literally older than
Everyone else.
than everyone else. And I already had my son when I went back. So it was, yeah, I had different discussions with my classmates about what I do after after class. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
gonna go pick up my son.
everyone else
And
expects you're gonna get like, let's go drinking or something like that. It's like, I'm not. It wasn't really a huge part of my college experience, quite honestly.
yeah, and just like you, I relate. I was very motivated in absorbing information and seeking out it from the professors and yeah, from TAs and everybody around. So um
Did you have the same kind of imposter syndrome, kind of feelings as you went through it, or did you not experience that?
back then I didn't know that existed, so I
It doesn't have a name, so it doesn't exist.
yeah, it was not in my literally my vocabulary, even though I speak four languages that hasn't entered yet. So I was totally oblivious to it. I was just going and like you, very, I had the direction and I'm like, I'm going. And my dream was to finish university, to have a college degree. And I'm the first one in my family. So it was,
Congrats.
it was on many levels. This was like, this is just fun being here. This is like super fun.
Well,
It's
I don't
hard.
think And I don't think there's anything better like from like when you know exactly what the next 4 years of your life or 2 years of your life or something like that are gonna map to, and it's like you know what to do and you just need to execute. There's some freedom in that I think we get lost. Like we leave school and then it's like how do I grow now as a person? It's like I know some people that
Yes.
having left college have never picked up, a book again. So it's like crazy. And yeah, it's not super clear that what you need to do as soon as you leave college.
I agree. I agree. So, I can sense that you were also an inspiration to those around you who were a little bit younger, didn't have the experiences that you had yet. Um, just to, just by, meeting someone, seeing someone who has this sense of direction can literally motivate someone to then go and find their own direction. So,
Yeah.
I think that you, from those years on, you were a mentor to some people, maybe if you don't know it. All right, so you went through, you pivoted, you are on this path, and yeah, let's talk about you graduated. What happened next?
Yeah, I realized coming up on graduation the importance of kind of getting a job, and I'd seen people graduate and not get jobs, and I was definitely terrified of that because I'd already lost time for in the pivot. So, and I was also just kind of done with paying for school, was hoping to kind of make some money in return and not be a broke college student. And I realized that these interviews really, really matter in software engineering. They're also very particular. They ask very specific types of questions, and it's not memorization questions, but it is sort of that critical thinking, coding in front of people, and it's not exactly related to if you're a good engineer. It's more about your ability to sort of showcase what you know on the fly in front of somebody and communicate well. It's very much a something you can learn to do through practice. So I was very fascinated with that and
Wait,
decided
how did you figure that out? Did you go through a lot of interviews, or like that's super,
both.
I'm
Yeah, yeah.
super
So
curious. How
yeah,
did you?
yeah. Well, so what's funny is I told all of my classmates, I think it was junior year, that I was going to work at Google. Like that's the direction, that was the goal. And because I'd publicly said it, I also felt very much like on the hook of like, okay, now I really now how do you now work at Google? It's like I didn't know anybody. This wasn't, an Ivy League that I kind of joined as a school. So I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I kind of decided to start researching it. And there were some early guides online showing that there were things you could do. One of the things was you had to get the interview, and that was sort of the first hurdle. The next hurdle was like if you could get an internship, that would be really great, because interns convert more easily to full-time employees at Google if you could do something like that. And then, barring that, you can kind of at the very end of graduation kind of go through the process and do that. And I was like, well, Google's kind of the goal, and if I don't hit Google specifically, I just kind of want to learn to sort of be, kind of a leader in hopefully the industry in tech and sort of just kind of, as much as possible, kind of learn as fast as I can. And a lot of that came down to doing actual interviews, and a lot of it came down to studying what the interviews would be like. So, me and a group of folks that started realizing the importance of this interview thing, we'd start skipping classes and lectures and things like that because we'd had upcoming interviews to kind of prep for, and we're like, well, we can afford to take a GPA hit, but we can't afford to not do
Not,
well in the
yeah.
Google interview.
How big was the group? Like,
About six kind of core members who are still friends to this day, and
oh,
then
wow. Uh-huh.
then maybe probably another 10-ish folks that kind of came and went, and it was like a nice. I've always been kind of the opinion that you don't understand something until you can teach somebody else, especially because
Ah,
they ask questions that you never
nice.
never would think. You're like, I don't know. It's a good question. I have no idea, but every time I couldn't answer something, it kind of exposed a weakness and was able to kind of learn. And so, yeah, that was how I kind of got good at interviews and interviewing in general. And eventually, that kind of led to a couple of different jobs. One of them kind of being, sort of as an interview coach, and one of them as being, a software engineer. And I did not get Google right out of college. And I did actually get the chance to interview for them. And I got an internship opportunity right before, and I was so excited for it. I skipped my final exam for a class. I like actually lost like 50% of the points on my GPA tanked because I was studying through the whole thing trying to do real well, and I didn't pass the first time I went through a Google interview. But I knew what I did wrong, and I kind of was like, okay, we're gonna wait. If they have you wait 12-ish, 12 to 18 months, and then you
Okay.
can kind of interview again and you can go through the process. So in the meantime, I took a job at General Electric and
Yeah.
kind of did my best to kind of very quickly get promoted. So I was promoted, I think, within, I think it was like 13, 15 months or something like that. To a senior software engineer, which is too young to get promoted to a senior software engineer. Full disclosure, um, it's a
Hold on,
lot.
let's pause for a minute. Like
Sure,
what
sure,
I'm
sure.
what I'm finding out is you have a very unique way of learning because these are all results of your learning. The getting, the Google interview, getting the G promotion. So let's kind
Sure, sure. Yeah.
let's talk about a little bit about how you think about learning. Um, so how do you take a big idea like I want to be hired at Google and I want to do good at an interview and all these steps. So what's the process that's going on in your mind? Share with us. I'm so curious.
Yeah. I'm not sure there's a lot of secret sauce here. I think I'm fundamentally a pretty anxious person. I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I have anxiety disorders and things like that. So I'm naturally somebody that worries about what can go wrong, and
Okay.
so that's perfect for the academic environment because it means you plan for everything, and
Okay.
it's also really great for an interview environment because you can kind of study your way out of a lot of problems if you just make sure you know everything. If you know the whole textbook, it's hard to get questions wrong on the test. So I think that was particularly helpful. I'm not saying that you go get an anxiety disorder if you want to get promoted
No,
faster.
no,
That's
no, no,
probably
no,
not
no. That's not
the
what we're saying. We're saying is that we all have something unique about ourselves. That's just something that's about you, that you
absolutely.
turn into this strength
Yeah.
of I bring my strength in knowing like this is where you start. What could go wrong? And then do you make like a list in your mind or maybe write it down of what could go wrong? And then you literally like, okay, I need to find the answer to this in case this is what's gonna go wrong. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, there was a book that changed my life right around that time as well. It was a popular book called Getting Things Done by David Allen, and it's sort of popular amongst software engineers. I don't know if you've ever heard of it,
Mhm.
but the premise essentially, for those that aren't familiar, is ideas are like your head is for having ideas, not holding them. So kind of any idea that you have, like it's great to have the idea, but write it down and then kind of has permission to leave your head, and then you can decide, oh, that was a dumb idea, 5 minutes later, or that's gold, and that was huge for me because I found that I'd have lots of ideas and lots of intentions, and I'd overcommit to things, and quite frankly, I still do. But it's easier to kind of know what I've committed to if I actually have it all written down, and that one idea I think was something that really benefited me greatly. I'm not sure if that's ADHD, or I'm not sure what exactly that is, but for me, it seems to work particularly well. And yeah, breaking everything down into, okay, this is everything that's on my plate, everything from the dishes are piling up to I would like to be promoted, a very wide variety of things to kind of take care of, and then
Hmm.
kind of knowing, okay, then what do I want to prioritize? What do I care most about? And
Hmm.
again, the worrier in me makes it very easy to come up with every single thing I can possibly do, to try and get promoted as fast as possible. So breaking it all down is very helpful, and that's kind of the nature of that. Again, not magic, but I think fairly typical or straightforward, maybe.
Well, it's magic for you because it works. And I think the idea here is, or the message, that we all have something unique about our skills that we can turn into a strength that then can create magic if we put in the effort to and the time to do that, to turn it into magic. So, thank you. Thanks for sharing. I mean, it's fascinating. And then, I heard also that sometimes you pull in others to even enhance your process of learning and to broaden what you don't know, to find out what you don't know and to see where your boundaries are of to your knowledge. I mean, that's, adding that on top of the strength that we just discovered. That's super cool. I mean, you bring in collaboration and communication and teamwork. Huh. Okay. So, all right. So, jumping back in, so you're at G, you got promoted. What do you think? What's your state of mind?
Yeah, I thought, once I was promoted, I'd feel competent, I suppose, is what I was looking for. And I
Uh-huh.
didn't. I was like, I felt like I was the exact same person, but I happened to have a different title. And so I decided quickly that the problem must not have been the title that I had. It must have been the company I had it at. So General Electric is a great company, and I recommend it for folks that kind of work there. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
an awesome place. But I was like, maybe the problem is that it's not really a tech focused company. Maybe I need to work at a tech company. And I, kind of wasn't sure if I should interview at Google again. And it just so happened that I had an opportunity to interview at Salesforce. And Salesforce was a big tech company. I'm like, well, it's not quite Google, something in between. Maybe I can give that a go. And so I started kind of studying, and I did, a week or two kind of a prep, and I was like, let's just see what happens. Let's roll the dice. And I passed, and I got into Salesforce, and it was a great place because the place I joined was called Philanthropy Cloud. So there's lots of different kind of organizations within Salesforce, but this organization specifically was building software to help charities quickly set up web pages for donations and things of that nature. So there was not that anything I did at General Electric was bad, but there was immediate purpose and immediate impact that you could see being had for every sort of feature you built there. And I was hooked on that. I love that. And I honestly probably wouldn't have left Salesforce ever if I hadn't been reached out to by Google. Because I really enjoyed it. I felt like I could make a big impact, and I could design features quickly and get them out. And quite frankly, that was the best team I think I'd ever been on, and that includes Google, which, by the way, great team at Google. I'll shout outs to them if they're listening. But what I'd say is like the team was so great because there were people that were sort of senior engineers, staff level engineers that would bend over backwards to try and help you if you were stuck. And maybe it was because I was um, while I was a senior, quote unquote, I was definitely the most junior person on the team, so I'd get stuck more than anyone else. And people, it was fully remote. They'd jump into a meeting like, hey, yeah, I'm stuck on this. Oh, let's talk about it. And they'd waste, or to me, it felt like they'd waste 45 minutes of their day explaining exactly why something went wrong. And then they'd even like test me. They'd be like, okay, so what if you change this? What would happen then? And it was such an instructive environment, and I kind of learned end to end how everything worked, and we kind of had a shared ownership
So you're
of the
talking about
code.
Google now, not Salesforce.
Oh, sorry. No, now I'm
Or
still talking about Salesforce. Yeah,
oh, you're
believe it.
still talking
This
about.
was,
Oh, okay.
yeah, this was all at Salesforce. And they were kind of wonderful at just sort of teaching everything end to end.
Uh,
And
so
yeah,
so let me be curious. So you are a GE and again you're promoted and like, well, maybe if I change. So how easy, how hard was that for you? Because I know looking backwards, okay, you like what we see is, oh, you moved from GE to Salesforce and great job. But as a human being, how hard was that transition or how or what was hard about it? What was easy for you? Um, and then yeah, finding Salesforce. How did you find that?
I think the GE transition, like once I transitioned to Salesforce, I loved it. It was actually hard to make the decision to leave GE, and it's because I wasn't actually hired as just an employee. I was hired as part of a leadership program that they take people and
Oh,
sort of
yes.
put them through. And the
Mhm.
point was actually a sort of a fast track position to one of the many C-suite positions
I heard
within the
about it.
company. So the intent was actually sort of, I think, 4 or 5 years of sort of going through a specific program and then having the opportunity to potentially kind of lead part of a company. So it definitely felt like the right direction from like it ticked all the boxes as sort of a leader that I was kind of looking for. And I think part of the problem was recognizing that I actually didn't feel as technically capable as I wanted to. So that was why I kind of made the I was like technically, like I said, a senior engineer,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
feel as competent as I wanted to about all of the technology that I worked with, which is why I went to Salesforce. And that transition, the decision to make the transition was difficult. But as soon as I made the leap, again, the impact of the work that I was doing at Salesforce made
Hmm.
it just such a no-brainer. And it was so easy to just fall in love with the job and
Wow.
then to want to learn the technology to the best of the ability to deliver the features faster.
Yes.
And it was yeah, honestly one of the uh best decisions I made. So really great.
Allow me to double click on this because a lot of us go through this like we're this point in our life's career where I feel like that I need to change. I need to, do something else, just like you, like go to Salesforce, but we don't have the answer of where to go, and the decision is hard. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, did someone help you in making that decision? Did you ask for help? Or did you again had a process of how you make a decision? I don't, pros and cons, yes and no. The five whys I or something that you used then and maybe developed since to make a decision because I feel, there's so many of us who maybe even someone who's listening like I'm at that point. I don't know how to make that decision. Is that the right decision? How do I know it's the right decision? Is it the right time, right decision? All those.
Yeah, I feel very seen, Andrea. So I'm an engineer, so naturally I built a spreadsheet to help me answer the question, and I did this when I decided to switch majors, and I did it when I decided to leave GE. I've done it actually for basically every major life choice I've made, where I basically list, down in one column, kind of everything I think might change and might be different, whether that's, I'll be paid more money or I might, change locations of where I live.
So like
And
positive and negative, so indifferent, all positive, negative. So you
positive,
just
negatives, and then I'd sort
okay.
of kind of give each of those a scale as to probabilistically how likely I thought those things were to be true. So, probability that
Oh,
I'd have a good,
okay.
a better team than what I currently had or a
Uh-huh.
worse team than I currently had. And then I'd sort of calculate my own sort of score and I'd kind of look objectively at the data and say, is this the right choice? Yes or no? And then always, pretty much no matter what, regardless of what the data said, I'd sort of throw out the data and, it was good to have the data and then go with your gut. So you're not going anywhere blind. And a few times I've actually, the right choice was actually not to do the thing that I ended up doing. But that was a great way of just sort of framing things for me. So naturally, worrying about it and obsessing it over it, a spreadsheet was something that was very, very helpful for me.
Again, the power of writing it out. I'm so big on this. So thanks for bringing it
Absolutely.
up. It's such a
Absolutely.
great tool. I recommend it. I use it with my clients, use it with myself, with kids, with everybody who listens. Get it, as you said, get it out of your head, put it down. Um, Stop worrying about it in your head. See it. You use a different sense, your eyes. Um, and then your brain just works differently, starts to find connections in a different way um, and see decisions in a different way. So, yeah, thanks for sharing. And yes, I love spreadsheets myself too. And again, this podcast is not about people using more spreadsheets. It's
No.
about
Writing things
be,
down.
it's about writing things down, however you write things down, electronically or on a piece of paper or, in the sand, however you do it, wherever you are, get it out of your head. And I love your process of, I want to write it all out, see it, worried about it there while I'm doing it. And then you can also see, okay, what else is missing? Like these cool questions. Well, what am I not thinking about? That, or I don't know, you wrote 50 down and then the then the next one is going to be like, oh, I never thought about this, but you had to write all 50 out to then get to the 50, 51.
Yep. Exactly.
So it's a super cool process. And then I want to also touch base on what you said. And then I step back and I listen to my gut. So where is that coming from? Because as an engineer, sometimes for some of the engineers, data is everything. I
Yeah.
need as much as I can. And, that's the rational side of our brain. I can validate that. I can control that. I can manage that. What about this gut? How did the gut show up for you?
It was really helpful for the first several times that I did this that I think the data matched what kind of my gut said about things. So it's really easy when the data aligns. And I think for that sort of first jump, the switch to computer science, my gut agreed with the transition, and so did the data, so to speak. Which is, by the way, all subjective anyways. And so it's not like this was super data driven. It was more at best, a shot in the dark, me throwing darts at a dartboard. But when I had the choice to leave Salesforce to go to Google, um, the data actually said, why leave? Like they're actually like you have a great team, it's great impact. There's like certainly I make more money as a Google engineer, but the money wasn't really kind of the motivating factor. Like it's always nice, but it's wasn't something I was gonna obsess about. And so everything was basically saying to stay at Salesforce. But for one reason or another, I wasn't really sure why. It felt like, maybe it's just the chip on the shoulder. I got the offer at Google. I did really well in the interviews. I sort of leveled up and kind of got a senior, like a higher level position than I was at. And all of that kind of was stuff. So I don't know how much of this was just, sort of my inner child, having pointed at Google, sort of early on, I guess not even that early on. I guess I was still an old man in college, it seems like, but maybe it was a little bit of a chip on the shoulder,
I
just
think
stick
it's the
with
inner
idea.
child of dreaming. Let's just,
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it
It's
was a
the dream,
dream.
the
Doesn't
dreamer.
matter what age you were, it's still that dream.
And so I decided, okay, we'll do it. I'll jump and I'll make a jump. And thankfully, I did. It was about a week or two after I left Google that all of a sudden, like kind of out of nowhere, half the cloud actually shut down and they totally reorged and people got moved to different things. And it's not that moving elsewhere within Salesforce would have been so bad, but I think a lot of what I loved about the job was that specific team and that specific product and kind of what we did. So serendipity. So again, shows that, trusting your gut's not necessarily the worst thing, even if the data doesn't directly support it. So
I see.
that was sort of the transition to Google, and I really enjoyed my time at Google, and my team at Google was fantastic. Again, the mentorship is unparalleled, and just everyone kind of is again, not only helpful but also very technically competent. Um, the fun story that I like to tell at Google, just because it's so crazy, is um, Java is a very common language there, and I had done a pull request in Java, and I had used a method I wasn't super sure on, but it seemed to do what I wanted it to do. And I had somebody review my code, and they told me that it was not actually the right way to kind of use the Java method. And I asked them, how do you know? Like where I didn't see like exactly where it was. It was kind of in the documentation, but it was really buried in there. So how did you know? And it turned out the person actually just wrote that part of Java, and they knew it very well because they literally wrote that part of the language. So it was like, oh man, that's so cool. So very just a wild experience, the people that you end up kind of meeting. So yeah, a lot of fun and definitely something that I enjoyed. And then I worked for Google for several years. And um, then another kind of inflection point came where I had the opportunity to write a book. And what I'd say with that is throughout this whole process, even from since before GE, I never really lost the skill of interviewing because I recognized that it was going to be important if I ever wanted to switch jobs and things like that, and it would open up a lot of possibilities for me. So I kind of would still coach and do things in the background. So I had friends that were like, "Hey, you did this thing in college. Like, would you just consider coaching me on the side and teaching me how to get better?" And so I did that for most of my career in parallel, and I actually joined a couple of companies that did it professionally. So one was called Pathrise, another was called Carrot. Another one was I got an offer interviewing IO. I actually worked somewhere close to about 5 jobs, um, and these were all sort of side gigs, as my time permitted, while working any of my main jobs throughout the course of the years, both at General Electric and Salesforce. And
Wow.
I realized that I was, starting to get pretty good at this because would see a lot of people having very specific problems in interviews, and I'd be able to coach folks through them. And then there were some days where it'd be just sort of, I'd work for, my 8 hour block of time. And before work, I'd have sessions with people at some of these companies, and then I'd have sessions after at some of these companies. So a lot of days were 13, 15, 16 hour days. And it was just sort of going through stuff and then doing it on the weekends. And so I actually got, I think, I kind of totaled it up once, and I think it's something like close to 5,000 hours or so of just sort of doing interview practice with people, which is not quite the 10,000 hour rule you hear people kind of need, but I'm sort of was halfway there. And
So tell me, Mike, let me pause for a second. What
sure.
motivated you to do that? Because, looking from the outside in, again, I admit, from someone looking from the outside in, you are at Google or even at Salesforce, you have a great job, pays well, you're happy there, you have a great team. Well, one would say you made it, you succeeded, you got it. Why put in so much more effort and so many more hours into helping others do the interview? Now, I know it sounds as a crazy question, but it's obvious it's not the money. Obviously, it was a choice. So, what was behind it? What was your thinking as of why?
Yeah, I think there's a great quote and goes something like, there's the answer that sounds good, and then there's the truth, and it's kind of one of those. So I'll first give you the answer that sounds good, and then I'll give you kind of the truth. So for one, I was actually just pretty good at it, and nothing motivates success like getting people into companies. And I'd regularly help people, coach them, get them good at it, and then they'd get an opportunity to interview at Google or Amazon or Netflix, and they'd get into it. So I actually had lots of friends that I coached into these companies, and I wasn't necessarily at Google throughout the time. So again, Salesforce for a while, eventually Google,
Yes.
and then
Mhm.
um, so I realized that just like I was good at it, and nothing motivates
Well,
success.
you got rewarded. It was a
I
great
I was I
reward.
was I was sort of rewarded for it because
Yes.
a lot of people kind of were grateful of it, and I was kind of good at doing it. What I
Yeah.
also would say is at the time, from Salesforce to Google, I actually did care about the money because my wife made a huge career pivot as well and decided that she wanted to go back to school, and we didn't really want to take out any debt to do so. So the sort of five job thing was something certainly because I was good at it, but also because the market kind of demanded it. And it was easy for me to kind of make money so we could make enough to basically pay the next set of classes that she'd need to take as she kind of worked through. And she's now a doctor. And that was sort of, 5 years or so of going through that process, which was a lot. So that's kind of why I think I worked as hard as I did. I probably would have done it regardless. But the long days was definitely just in an effort to also
Oh, so
make as
she
much as I
was the
could.
motivation.
She was a lot of the motivation as well. So again, it
Oh,
helped that I was good at it, like I said.
oh
But
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, definitely that kind of inspired it. And then at that point, I had, like I said, the opportunity to interview at Google, and because I'd been doing it, it was very easy to pass the interviews. I think those were the best interviews of my life, quite honestly, just because I knew exactly, because I'd done a lot of studying. I knew exactly the types of questions Google would ask. I was very good at the things that most people weren't good at. And most people struggled with just because I'd been doing it for so long, not
Yeah.
frankly because
Just practice. I mean, there's some talent and then the practice.
no, it's mostly like again, it goes back to what I said earlier. I was just gonna try and work harder than everybody else does, which maybe sounds a little, maybe that sounds more arrogant than I mean. I just meant I had a long horizon to work very hard for a long time, which I think contributed to the
Well, again,
success.
let's explain it with you're coming from this place of a unique, unique situation, call it, maybe attention deficit. So we all have something in our upbringing, and I'll repeat myself again, that it might not look as we look at each other, might not look on the exterior that, oh, there's, something going on with Andrea. Um, but I've met a lot of people in my life, and I can always find something that is going on that we all have a choice to either turn it into our strength and then, repeat it. And then, as you said, work hard at that we originally are not good at when we compare it to others. But we can turn it into magic, or we choose not to and ignore it. So I'm happy that you worked hard at it. I'm happy that you acknowledge that you worked hard at it and you give yourself credit, because I want you to give yourself credit, because look where it got you, and look where it got, hundreds of other people who you coached to then get into, the places that they got into through interview, and now maybe they're supporting their wives, or, building their own lives. I mean, the spillover effect is amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it helped that, you'd grow to care about these people too if you're having sessions with them several times throughout the week, and you know that they're
Oh,
on
yes.
a visa and they're only here for another 45 days and they need to get a job and they really, really need to pass this interview. It's like certainly there's pressure, but it's also, like you develop close bonds, I think, with the people you end up coaching. And I don't know if because I know you do coaching, I assume you kind of have some people that just, like they're friends, by the end of the time coaching together, you really know them very well, and that's super rewarding.
It is. I agree. Yes, yes, it turns. It, I think one of the biggest joys in life is to see another human succeed at something that they really want.
Yeah,
Not talking about, achieving material or,
yeah,
financial things, uh, but through achieving whatever they want is their growth, seeing their arch of growth.
yeah,
Um, and witnessing that and celebrating with them, being there when it's their lowest, and then when it's their highest, and
yeah.
then in between. The, yeah, that's, I think, such a blessing and joy. All right, so getting back to you, so you're really good at helping others with the interview process, and now you're working at Google. So tell me about the decision to write the book.
Yeah, I came to the realization there's kind of I think two factors that kind of led to it. I came to the realization that there wasn't really a up-to-date book since the pandemic hit, really, that kind of explained how the market changed. At one point, interviews were all in person. You used to write code on a whiteboard. And now everything is virtual and everything's in an editor. And that really changes the communication style and what you should and shouldn't be doing. And it even raises the bar. Um, I paired with a company, I said I worked for several companies, but one of the main ones was interviewing IO. And that company prides itself in sort of being able to do mock interviews anonymously with kind of different people from different companies. And the cool thing is they collect data and then they sort of present data to help people pass interviews. And one of the kind of stats that they realize is that interview questions are just getting harder, especially since the pandemic, and especially now with the rise of AI and all the other kind of things that can be used in interviews. Like questions are getting harder. So that sort of coupled with all of the changes was like made me realize that a book was a good idea and that I kind of wanted to do a book. I also realized that I'd hit the goal of Google and I didn't really know what next looked like. I was like, well, I've had this goal since I was, in college. Like I'm not, what's next? Do I want to climb? Do I want to be a staff software engineer? Do I want to be senior staff? Do I want to be a director? Or do I just, do I want to chill here? I really didn't know what the right answer was. And so I happened to bring it up to the CEO of Interviewing IO, and she laughed the second I brought up the idea of a book because I thought maybe I could pair with her on it with the data from Interviewing IO. And she said O'Reilly Books is right now trying to work with me to write a book, and I need a technical author. So it was just serendipity that it kind of went together, and so it was a pure coincidence. And we kind of sat down, we had a couple of ideas, and we decided almost immediately it was a great idea. I'd also done work for her for years at this point, so there was some natural trust there. And we realized at the time that the book that was currently the best one on the market for job interviews was called Cracking the Coding Interview. And it was by Gail McDowell. And she had written it back in 2008, I think was the initial one. And the most current version was 2000 and I think 15. And so that meant, post pandemic, it was quite old. So on a whim, I just said, well, we definitely could do O'Reilly books. But another option is to actually just ask the author, like, hey, why haven't you updated this? Have you considered writing, an updated edition? Maybe we could help you with that. And we had some initial talks, and then it turned out that we had kind of lots of information, and she was very interested in sort of the data again piece from interviewing IO and was happy with the amount of kind of coaching experience that I had kind of as an individual. And she's like, actually, I'm pretty sure this isn't a new edition. I think this is a sequel to the book. Let's call it Beyond Cracking the Coding Interview. And that's kind of where the book came from. And at that point, it was sort of a choice. I'd had the opportunity to um, leave Google and kind of sign a contract that would, demand certain deliverables by certain dates. Um, and I again pulled out the spreadsheet um, and went through, and everything's like, why would you leave Google? Like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. This book maybe could make some money, and quite transparently, if you're gonna make money, like don't sell a book on Amazon. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like if you're trying to make a lot of money, that's not the best way to do it. I think a lot of people think um, authors for some reason, if you sell a lot of books, you're going to make a lot of money, and that hasn't been the case in my experience at the very least. Um, and so yeah, I was like, well, this is kind of something I want to do, and I at the time had again been working several jobs for a very long period of time, and I was severely burnt out. Um, it was something where I'd hit Google and I found that I wasn't happy. And I kind of always had assumed it was a foregone conclusion that if I got into Google, of course I would be happy. And I realized saying that out loud that it's kind of a little bit childish. It's like any job is still going to be a job. But yeah, I had a good team. I worked on a good product, but it wasn't doing things I really wanted to be doing. It wasn't involving technology I really was interested in. And while the people were great, I worked mostly remote, so I didn't really get to see them very much. Um, and I started having like pretty serious kind of issues with burnout. And so I kind of had to make the choice. It's like, do I want to free my time? Do I want to do something new, or do I want to kind of work through this? And I actually decided, well, maybe I'm not even sure software engineering is what I want to do anymore, because the next thing for me was to get promoted, and then after that, get promoted again, and like like there was no better company that I wanted to work for Not that there aren't better companies, just to be clear. I thought everyone likes their own companies, but there was no company I really wanted to work for, so I didn't really know what the next step was. And so this was sort of a natural uh, deviation. I was able to go directly into doing something that I knew I liked, something that I thought could really impact a lot of people. All the tips and tricks of the last, almost decade or so of coaching people and knowing what people tend to actually struggle with, not just when practicing, but actually in the interviews themselves. Something like that didn't exist on the market. So I was like, I think this is more meaningful. And that's kind of what I ended up chasing, meaning, I think. And that was sort of the transition point, and I made the leap and decided to jump into writing a book full time.
Well, thank you for sharing. I know it's not the easiest topic to talk about. And just imagining how hard it was actually to say those words out, to even know, am I in the process of burnout? Is, because the first question that comes to us humans is, wait, is this happening to me? No, it can't happen to me.
Yeah.
You know, like it can happen to everybody else, but it cannot happen to me. Especially when I'm doing all this great work and put in all this effort. And so definitely our brain sometimes works against us. So just want to acknowledge the difficulty of saying that out loud. And and it's so interesting. And then to bring something from your story that really, is pulling me, and is this this reoccurring theme of meaning, of purpose, of I wanna help people out. I want to do something that I know helps others. This has been and brings joy. I mean, from being a magician, which you make people happy,
Yep.
to writing the book that makes people happy because they get through the interview, and then everything in between. I mean, it's the same pattern and the same theme. This is something that's very important to you, and how beautiful that you have recognized it and kept it along your journey, because it's so easy to give up on that part. Once and let me focus on engineers, especially engineering leaders, engineers who, like got to their dream company, got to their dream position, got to their dream salary, got to, bought their dream house, dream car, so forth, because we all have dreams.
Yep.
And then, like, okay, um, that's all great, but I'm not happy. But, something is still off. And the higher someone is, the higher is the harder is to say, you know, I'm not happy, because society wants, like, well, you got everything that others don't have. How can you still not be happy? Right? So I just want to give you acknowledgement, and a little bit I'm talking about myself too, because I went through it I didn't get to the high level at Google myself, but where I came from, compared to the society and the people that I grew up with, I got really high, and people were wondering, well, why aren't you happy? And I had my own reason of why I wasn't happy. So you're the one who helped a lot of people when you needed help. How did you make that decision to say I need help and to reach out for help?
Yeah. I think self-reflection is not something that I think I do particularly well. There are, I think, maybe skills that I have, and self-reflection isn't one of them. I think I didn't realize that I was sort of like particularly unhappy until a couple of moments sort of later while I was at Google. and a couple of moments stick out to me, some of which are embarrassing, but I'm happy to share. One is I just, I start dropping things, and I started again. I think this was partially burnout, but I'd start dropping tasks, and then I sort of cut hours, and I decided I'd only kind of work, just with at Google, and try and really kind of just focus just on Google, and then I'd still not be able to get things done that I used to be able to fly through, and so I'd keep applying the same thing that had always worked for me in the past, which is more hours, kind of work harder. And it took a very long time before I realized that more hours was not helping. I'd sit in front of a computer for hours and somehow manage to not get anything done. And it wasn't because I was playing video games. It's just I couldn't bring myself to do it. Burnout is a very hard thing to describe. I think a lot of people, think you just need to take a vacation, take 2 weeks and it'll be fine. But I tried those sorts of things, and I'd find that I'd come back and I'd feel just as burnt out um, as I had before. And I really don't know exactly whether that's purely psychological or physiological, but I basically at one point found myself, um, my wife found me, in the shower, crying, and I had kind of just lost it. I couldn't get anything done, and I had a very simple thing that I needed to get done for my team at Google, and I missed it, and it felt so bad because it wasn't hard. It wasn't a hard thing to do, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. And I talked to mentors at Google, and they knew I was struggling, and I took a mental health leave for a little bit of time, hoping that that would help, and that didn't. Um, and I I found that therapy eventually was kind of the big thing that I needed. And it wasn't that I was ever resistant to therapy. It wasn't that I thought crazy people went to therapy. Um, it was just something that I figured that I was strong and like I was healthy, and I worked out 3 times a week, and I did my best to kind of eat right, and I even tried meditating occasionally when I could. So I was like I kind of have it all. I think I have it figured out. It's certainly something that's going to be helpful for somebody, but not for me. Um, and during the break, I was sort of mandated to sort of go see a therapist, and sort of finding somebody to just kind of consistently talk through and work through some of the problems. I think kind of meaning was something I was definitely still lacking, and I wanted to do something meaningful. And it really was again coincidence that this was right around the same time that I was talking with Aileen, the CEO of Interviewing IO, and then Gail, the author of the new book. And I was like, maybe this is the meaning I'm kind of searching for. Maybe that's what I need. And as soon as I switched and I made the decision to jump, and kind of sign the contract, it was like it's hard to describe other than just like an elephant kind of got up off your chest. And I didn't feel the need to, necessarily say that I'm an engineer and I'm the most technically, capable person, and I'm gonna, deliver no matter what and work harder than everybody else and get promoted faster. Um, I kind of was able to just sort of step back and decide that for right now, that wasn't who I was going to be. I was going to help people in a different way. And then I chose to go down the path of writing a book. And that was great for my mental health. And was definitely, I'm not necessarily saying that if you're struggling with burnout, go write a book, but it did work for me. So I'm not going to make you rich, but it did work for me.
Well, I think what I'm hearing and the research shows is that in high level of stress, um, it, focusing on something that really involves our decision making brain, um, is the prefrontal cortex is it's the best decision to occupy yourself and to bring yourself into the rational brain, um, versus lingering in the emotional brain. So great decision from a stress
Yeah.
management point, and to stepping out and making the burnout maybe into depression. So great decision there. Definitely, there's data that you made a good decision. But then I want to point out this other thing that it's not, as you said, it's not this for everyone, but it's at the same time it's not one thing that happened. It's these little things, that the small decisions that you made that added up, that you leaned into, telling people, leaned into asking for help, receiving help, and then you also leaned into telling people your ideas as they were surfacing, as you were maybe, reflecting, going to therapy, um, just thinking of what's next. And then to see the things, the opportunities that are around us. I'm a big believer that there's always a ton of opportunities around us. We
Yeah.
just don't see them,
Yeah.
literally because we get our brains so focused on a path. I mean, just like you described, I want to work at Google. For me, was I want to graduate from the university. I want to study finance. Like, all right, we all have these focuses, that like glasses, we put them on and then we see everything through these glasses. So until we decide to put those glasses down and literally either not have glasses or put different glasses on,
Yeah.
we can see the opportunities, um, that and the people around us who are willing to share these opportunities with us. I mean, most of the time, like you, it's just saying out loud the crazy ideas that you have. Hey, what about writing a book? What about co-writing a book? What about going talking to the author? So now that you are, at this moment in your life, the book has been written, you're not at Google anymore, the question comes of what's next? Do you have any ideas, plans, processes in place? What's going on?
I think, writing a book, the saying goes something like you write a book twice. First you write it and then you edit it. And I found that was true. The sort of editing and getting everything to not um everything to flow well, I think was a challenge. And we worked right up to the deadline. And transparently, I did what I did do best, and I just threw a lot of hours at it, the same way as before. I almost didn't learn anything. And similarly, at the end, around I think January, the book was released of 2025, so this year, and I was wiped. And I wouldn't say that I was unhappy, but I would say that I definitely just I had felt very drained. So I made the conscious decision I was going to kind of step back and take a few months off. Now, they always talk about the freshman 15, and I never experienced the weight gain of the 15 pounds freshmen are supposed to. I think probably because I didn't go to enough parties and things like that because I was um, too busy reading books or something like that. But I did experience the 15 pounds of being an author, so I'm not sure what the alliteration is there, but there's definitely was some weight gain while sitting in a chair all day writing a book. So I decided I was going to take some time off and kind of just sort of take care of myself, take care of my health, and then sort of figure it out. So right now I'm in, so it was released in January, and in February, March, April. I kind of took 3 months just to kind of get back into the swing of things and take care of myself. And now I'm just now starting to explore what's next. I admit I don't actually know. I've considered going back to engineering, maybe trying that again, and maybe give myself a little bit more grace. Um, Transparently, a sequel or a book in the same genre with the same publisher, it would be very interesting to do for maybe like a system design book of some kind, which is another interview style that's popular. And I don't know whether or not I would jump at the chance of writing a book again, or if I want to kind of reinvent myself again. But I don't exactly know what the right path is moving forward.
Hmm. What I'm hearing is that, there's ideas, and the openness is there to welcome opportunities as they show up. So, you know, if one thing is true about life is that when we're ready, um, something will show up. So um, stay stay looking, stay open, and keep being curious. What I'm sensing about you is that curiosity is still there, no matter what you're doing, no matter what you're writing, a code or a book, or helping people. You're a curious person who is not afraid to go and look things up and learn as much as you can about things. So, um, and then at the same time, it's okay not to know. It's okay not to have the next 5 years planned out step by step, but to now slow down and kind of look around, lift your head. What else is out there? Especially if you were focused writing a book, you were focused on, being the best engineer that you can be. Is it a combination of all that? Is it something new? The answer will come to you.
I I do think that yeah, this idea of sort of exploring things is an uncomfortable thing for me. Just looking back over the course, it was like I was in school, and then from school I was going to be, a physical therapist, and then I was going to work at Google, and then I was going to be promoted, and then I was going to, like it was constantly there was the next thing that I was kind of going for, and I think figuring out what the thing is that I actually want next is challenging. If you don't mind, there's a tweet that I read
Mhm.
a while ago that I thought was particularly relevant. If you don't mind, I want to read it out. Is that
Sure.
okay? Yeah. So it goes. Um, I can maybe link to who it was later, but basically the tweet says, um, motivations. Finding motivation is hard. Wanting there's wanting the thing, wanting to be seen, wanting the thing, wanting to do the things needed to do the thing, wanting to be seen to do the things needed to do the thing, wanting to want the thing, and then wanting to want to do the thing, wanting to have done the thing. And the author, I think, is exploring kind of basically the idea that it's like, there's what you want, there's what you think you want, but like, how do you want the right things? How do we, because again, I thought Google was the thing that was like, of course, that's going to be the thing that makes me happy. So wanting to want the right thing is kind of important. And so I'm still trying to figure out what the right thing is to want and go in that direction.
Yes. Yes. And I can imagine that the spreadsheet's gonna come back at some point.
It's probably gonna, absolutely. Don't know what exactly the direction is, but as soon as I've got something a little clearer, a spreadsheet will definitely be involved.
Yeah, yeah. So we all have these, tools that we have that can help us to gain some control.
Yeah.
Uh, and then acknowledging, like you said, that right now I'm in this unknown and I don't have control, and this is all new. This is all learning opportunity for me. I've never been here. And just like with everything else being before in your life, you can take it as, oh, this is an opportunity to learn, or oh, this is an opportunity to freak out, and turn around and go back to what I know, what I'm comfortable with, and so forth. So, uh, you know, in the one, what's next? It's a loaded question. I admit it when people ask me too. It's for me, it's a growth question of what I want is connected to my growth, who I want to become, who I want to grow into. What else do I want to grow in my life? Not just me as a growing my ego and my bank account, but as
Mhm.
you said, what about others? Do I want to help others in any way in my life, or do I just want to focus on myself? And I know it sounds crazy as I say it out loud, but we all have these questions because our brain is bringing all these thoughts in there like clouds. And taking the time to know not the direction, but I use the word heart, but to know my heart of what's in my heart so that I can then step on any path because I will commit to myself and to what I want from myself. Um, that has been helpful for me.
Yeah. You say it's crazy. I actually think you're right. We're all just trying to figure it out. And the people that are next to you that feel as though they have everything figured out, they're just trying to figure everything out. That's more or
Yes.
less what I've learned in this time on this planet so far.
Yes. And you're taking the time to figure it out. That's one of the resources that most people don't take,
Yeah,
don't invest the time to figure it out. So, in a way, you're ahead of those who are just thinking about it and not taking any action. So,
for sure.
kudos to you. Well, Mike, thank you very much for sharing. And as we are at the end of the podcast, we talked about a lot of things. I usually invite my guests to close us out. So I know you shared a lot. We heard a lot about your wisdom and your learning and how you operate as an amazing human being. So if someone listening right now and if they want to connect with you, are you open to connecting with them?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's maybe we could drop a LinkedIn or my website's MikeMroczka.com. So if you can
For
spell Mroczka, good luck. You're better off probably Googling the book Beyond Cracking the Coding Interview and finding my name that way than trying to spell my last name.
I will add your LinkedIn definitely link there so that people don't have to do a lot of hard work. So, you know, leave us with the message. What would you like us to walk away with today?
I think maybe if there's something I could kind of leave with folks is it's just that, you know, for one, whatever the goal is for whatever you've decided you're going to work on, whether that's being, the best software engineer you can be or whatever your job is, getting the promotion, working at the company, whatever is the thing that you want. Kind of recognizing again, it's cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. It's like kind of the journey, not the destination. And it's not really about the thing. It's about everything kind of around the thing. And as you've mentioned, I think some of the best times in my life have kind of just been, engaging with people and being able to provide that impact and feeling as though I'm contributing in some way or another. So, yeah, and I'd also say just don't necessarily be afraid to get help. Maybe self-reflect more than I do. Maybe the other one that I'd recommend for folks. So even this conversation has been like good just from a reflection standpoint.
Well, on that note, thank you very much. Reflecting back, thank you very much for this time spent together. It has been an honor. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks so much, Andrea.